right, folks, last but never least, our anchor man. Van Rose is wrapping up today's event with an overview of the residential market. Van is Chief Operating Officer of Rose & Womble Realty, and once again, I'm happy to bring Van to the podium.
Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate Andy inviting me back and Dr. Tanner. I'm completely honored to be able to do this because this is my 23rd year that I've done that. And what makes me the most excited was it only took me 12 years to be able to come back and give you a real positive report. So let's start and see how we did last year with our predictions. One of the things we speculated on was that we'd have a big problem with inventory, and we were spot on with that prediction. If you look at that chart, you'll see that back in 2011, we had 13,000 listings in the marketplace. When we started 2019, we came out with a measly 7,600 listings. To try to put that in perspective for all of you, there's 1.7 million people that live in Hampton Roads. That represents about 650,000 households. That means right now, there's one house for every 100 households to choose from. Give you another perspective, that's like going shopping for bread the day before a hurricane. We pondered what the experts were saying was, is there a housing bubble getting ready to happen? Well, the good news for all of you here sitting in this room is it didn't happen, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen in the near future. Look at Hampton Roads. This room, which probably is made up about 90% homeowners, you saw at least a 6% appreciation in price, with that average price being about $330,000. If you lived on the south side, you had double digits this year, 13%. You ought to give everybody high fives for how much money you made this year. If you were on the peninsula, there was a small decline of about 2%, but it's worth taking a second to look at that, because the decline was not caused by really a lack of activity, it was a shift in activity. The blue line represents attached housing, the orange line represents the detached housing, and you can see between 2017 and 2018, there was a massive shift in product. The people went from attached housing to new attached housing, and the single family, there was far less opportunities, so that ended up with a net of about 2% loss. We predicted that the rates would incrementally increase, and in fact they did. But we enjoyed only going from 4.03 to 4.46 during the course of the year. Put that in perspective, that's the exact same interest rate we had in 2014. So how did we do for 2018 overall? Well, I think we did pretty good. If you look at 2018 resale closings, you'll see that we went up 1,000 units. We went up to almost 24,000 units absorbed in Hampton Roads, which was a 4.5% increase. If you look at new construction's numbers were a bit different. They were a little bit down by 179 units. The loss in those units isn't a reflection of demand at all. It was a reflection in our ability to put those units online. We had massive delays caused by weather, by trades, by cities, by regulations, which caused that delay in 2018, and then we'll probably continue to confront the industry in 2019. If you look at the average market time fell to 64 days. But I draw your attention to that little box up there that says, even though it was 64 days, 40% of all houses on the market sold in less than 30 days, meaning those that were priced right, most of them garnered multiple offers and many of them sold for greater than list price. So at the end of the year, our top 10 builders started with Ryan Homes with 586 closings. And it worked down to Napolitano Homes at 62. What is really, really interesting in this year about that slide is the fact that the distribution enormously changed in Hampton Roads. Ryan Homes was responsible for about 20% of all new construction sales. But infill builders, especially in the city of Norfolk, accounted for 30% of all the new construction housing. That left 50% of the market to be shared by all the other builders in Hampton Roads. If you look at the top communities in Hampton Roads, it's also an interesting story. The number one communities was Spence Crossing in Virginia Beach at 119 units. That's an amazing number anywhere at any time. That was done by the Dragas companies. If you look at all those various communities, what's interesting is that 5 of those communities were in were in Chesapeake. 3 of those communities were in Williamsburg. Only 1 was in Virginia Beach and 1 was in York County. But of those 10 communities, 5 of those communities were developed and sold by Ryan Homes. So what do we see for 2019? I think it's pretty darn bright. The residential demand is excellent across the whole marketplace. We have low inventory, which is going to cause price increases once again across the whole spectrum. We have an abundance of great demographic diversity, meaning we have those 80 million millennials, we got those 60 million baby boomers in great numbers, especially here in Hampton Roads. As everyone on this stage has talked about today, we have an improving local economy, and thank you, Dr. Agarwal. I really loved having a positive approach today. That was phenomenal. Especially with the DOD, the medical, and tourism, those are all great things that's going to help our housing market in 2019. We have low and stable interest rates, and we have this emerging affordable sector, and that's being created by MOYOC, where 20% of all the housing stock in 2018 was created in MOYOC. So I'd like to thank everyone for this opportunity. I see 2019 as basically being blue skies with a very few clouds. So thank you to Terry Gerhardt, who put the numbers together, and thank you to all my friends at Rose and Womble who allow me to do this every year. Thank you.
So another quick question from the audience, Van, and it has to do with your MOYOC comment. Anybody who's driven south of Chesapeake or driven down to the Outer Banks, I'm sure has seen the development that's going on in Currituck County, especially the northern part, which is known as MOYOC. What do you think the implications are on the rest of the Hampton Roads market?
I think it's a great question, Larry. I think MOYOC has probably surprised all of us. When we did year-end numbers and we saw that they had 20% of all the housing stock that was built in Southside Hampton Roads happened in MOYOC, it's pretty incredible. But what's driving that is lot cost. When you build a house in MOYOC, as opposed to building a house in Chesapeake, where we've had so much growth over the last 20 years, there's a $100,000 differential of a house to go 5 miles. That has replaced what I call the affordable sector that we've had for years and years. It used to be Route 10. Now I don't have to drive all the way to Route 10 to get a $100,000 differential in housing.
One more. With the continued growth in the multifamily sector, as Richard Councilman told us, what, if any, implications do you think that has on the growth of single-family housing?
I'm glad you asked that one. Every year, we hear how phenomenal the people in the multifamily markets are doing, and it has certainly impacted housing, the residential side of housing. However, we have lived in that world long enough where they've had big enough rent increases that right now we're able to produce single-family houses at the same price that those guys, or monthly payment-wise, that those people that are living in their apartments. And one of the things that's always great about apartments is you shove the people in the apartments and let them live there for 2 or 3 years, and miraculously out pops a child. And that means they need to buy a house.
Are there any biology majors in the house that would like to head up? No.